Yeah, they're right back there. Hello, everybody. If we can quiet down. We got some stools and chairs. This is Lee Kindell brings a crowd, and we've been growing and growing, but we're busted at the seams here. So we set this up so that you can kind of watch from both sides, because we've been filling in this gallery, and now we're expanding this way. So, and I think there's some more seats back there. So a couple quick announcements. One, welcome to Fresh Consulting. We do digital design. We're a really innovation-focused company. We also do quite a bit of work in consumer hardware product development, robotics and automation, and AI and ML, especially in machine learning and machine vision. We've got about 380 employees, been around almost 20 years. So welcome. And continuing on the education, and then also welcome to Northwest Robotics Alliance. So for those of you, raise your hands, how many is this your first Northwest Robotics Alliance event? Awesome. So I know I've seen a lot of regulars here that have been showing up. We typically have events every month. Last month we were at Carbon Robotics. Previously we did a marine robotics event, humanoid robotics. So we change up the topic every month. If you're interested in hosting a future event, come up and see me, and we'll talk. And next, on the education track, we are hosting a computer vision webinar February 24th. So if you're interested in how you can put computer vision into an application in your workforce, sign up, and that's 9 a.m. Wednesday, February 24th. And then lastly, I want to say we got this photo booth here. So after we get done tonight, feel free to come get a photo, put it out there on social media. So if you're not already we have a nice LinkedIn page. So make sure you're following Northwest Robotics Alliance on LinkedIn. And with that, I want to call up our three panelists, Lee Kindell, Clayton Wood, and Parker Owen. So they're going to get settled in there. We got a little slide, and one by one, we're going to do your introduction. So Kurt, go ahead and pull up the first one. So Parker, you want to go ahead and introduce yourself?
Can everybody hear me all right? All right, very good. So I'm Parker Owen, the co-founder and CEO of Velodex Robotics. We're a very early stage startup. I got my PhD from the University of Washington in imitation learning for manufacturing robotics. Yeah, go Huskies. And then worked at Amazon Robotics for about 4 years, where I founded a project called Vulcan. And then for a few years after that, worked in the autonomous vehicle space, where I did machine learning for behavior planning. So planning out the next 9 seconds of vehicle trajectory based on what other road users are doing. And then I founded Velodex because I'm super excited about the opportunity, the nexus where we're at right now with machine learning and robotic manipulation to really have an outsized impact in areas that really have not seen automation growth to impact local and regional food producers. So we're focused on the food space as an entry point. We're doing general purpose robotic manipulation, and we're very excited about the opportunity for this to touch and impact almost everybody's lives. So super excited to be here, and thanks for having me.
Hi, my name is Clayton Wood. I'm think of myself as kind of a multi-industry tech exec. Did aerospace and then a few startups. I ran Synapse product development for a couple of years. Started getting into robotics with UNU, where we developed robotic camera for greenhouses. Went from there to Picnic, Pizza Robot. We used to, early days of pizza robotics, where you just say pizza robot and everybody gets excited. Now you say Lee Kindell and everybody gets excited. And did that for about 5 years. And now I'm doing some venture work with Redstick Ventures, which is a seed stage food-focused VC, and also doing consulting and advising for food startups as well as other technology startups.
Wow, that's a hard act to follow with you two. I'm just a pizza maker. My name's Lee Kindell. I am I am the founder of Moto Pizza. We are really trying hard to focus on quality food and quality experience. But the thing that really excites me is technology. This whole bringing this component of robotics, AI, and technology into food innovation, I'm really excited about. It's an honor to be here with all of you. I can't believe how many of you are here. We're so grateful for that. And yeah, really looking forward to this talk. Little bit of what I do here, you'll see in the back. In my dough production, I've integrated robotic technology and AI in what we're doing. We at our stadium productions, we have picnic robotics in there, and yeah, just kind of moving forward with a lot of things. We partnered with Zipline Technology, so we're gonna be the first here in the West Coast to do drone delivery. So yeah, we got a few things going on. I'm really excited to have this talk and really happy to be here. And I think we have an intro for those who don't know Moto Pizza, a little introduction. Thank you.
Definitely worth it?
Yeah.
Woo.
Guys, you let people wait for this. Oh, this is phenomenal.
Would you wait 3 months for it?
It is worth it.
I would 10 out of 10 recommend run, go get some.
Have you heard about Moto Pizza?
Oh, sir, I have.
Moto Pizza is insane.
Okay, I would like to rave about Moto Pizza.
And people actually wait months to get their hands on a pizza there.
Oh my goodness.
Beautiful.
Thanks, Lee. Gotta love Lee's energy. So for those of you who haven't seen it, there's a video, I think it's on GeekWire, and Lee's being interviewed, but there's this 30-second snippet. And, it's like, hey, what's pizza doing at a robotics event? Lee, distilled it down. He's like, my dream is that I want to see someone order put their order in via kiosk or mobile app. Picnic Robotics or some robotics device is going to make my pizza in the background, and I'm going to deliver that pizza via drone. So I'm like, what a better way to start talking about robotics than through what Lee's bringing to life. So as you implement that journey, I've worked with a lot of different companies in the food space. Talk to me for a second, and we're going to jump down the line here of, where's your biggest wins and where's your biggest failures?
So I would say my biggest wins as far as the technology component is through development of our distribution and with robotics. We did start with picnic robotics in the stadiums, and in the stadiums, it kills it there. But to do it on a small scale with operationally with stores, it's not the answer. So I'm trying to figure that out, how we can create the technology that fits for the small operator. And we'll go into that a little bit later. But the biggest wins was centralizing all of my production. So like, for example, my dough production was probably my biggest win, because now I have it centrally located where it piggybacks onto my distribution. And now we're already set up very early on to do international distribution.
Awesome. Clayton, you want to jump in on big wins and picnic?
Yeah, I think our biggest win, this is back in 2019. We were really one of the companies that put pizza robots on the map. If some of you may recall, Zoom Pizza is well known for raising $400 million and failing very quickly. We didn't do anything of the sort, but we did come out with a splash when we launched our product We changed their name. We got 2.5 billion views of our initial press release and videos, lots of TV coverage. We went to CES. At CES, we were just invited by Sodexo to actually make pizza on the floor in Las Vegas. We didn't have to pay for a booth. We were just there making pizza with the Sodexo staff, selling pizza to the attendees. But we actually got named to 3 different Best of CES lists just by being there. Huge crowds for 4 days, loads of fun. Broke in at the stadium at T-Mobile Park. Lots of real breakthrough moments. But unfortunately, we were a little too early. We were too early in that we didn't know what we didn't know. So that's sort of the other side of the story. But it was fun being famous for 15 minutes.
And I'd like to add that, like, you know, what he built was, it really put us on the map for what we're doing, like global attention wise, like what we're doing. So I give Picnic a lot of credit, and Clayton, working with Clayton, a lot of credit for what we've accomplished so far. So yeah, thanks.
Yeah, I think you know, we're much earlier stage, right? But I think we've generated a lot of excitement thinking about really where to use machine learning, where it makes the most sense, and where to use existing, you know, what I would say traditional type approaches where they perform very well and we know how to solve them. So we've generated a lot of excitement there. We also have the benefit of learning from folks that have come before us. So, you know, Picnic, we have the opportunity to learn from, you know, things like what not to do with Zoom. So I, you know, basically I think this idea of, you know, robotics focusing on very specific narrow tasks, typically like bespoke one-off type automation, that paradigm is changing, and we're thinking about workflows. So composition of different individual tasks using systems that can perform, do more than one thing. You know, you have to think about, you know, the hardware that you use to do different work in a series of operations, but we're thinking about this concept of workflows and the ability to turn those over. And so we're seeing a lot of excitement there, and I think that's probably one of the biggest wins, is thinking about that workflow paradigm.
Awesome. Lee, I know you're taking on a lot of technology. In some cases, you're, you know, a Zipline or Picnic, you've used somebody else's system. I've heard you talking about some of the stuff you're doing, thinking about, you know, doing your own systems. Tell me about, you know, what's been successful in your thought process of using robot as a service or buying somebody else's versus developing your own solution.
Yeah, so I think because we are so early in the game, there's a lot of companies coming in and leaving. And as I partner with more and more companies, what I've kind of learned is, I mean, let me prelude everything first with, I have no idea what I'm talking about. Like, I'm new to this game. I'm having so much fun, and I'm learning as I'm going. So I'm making a lot of mistakes, but I think they're smart mistakes. And as I start to figure this out, I think what I've learned most of all is, if you want to do something, do it yourself. So I've started a robotics company, and we're beginning to build our own robotics. Right now we're in the 3D model stage, and I've raised money on it. By the way, we closed on our seed round, so we're looking really good. Thank you, guys. Yeah, so to answer your question, I'm so excited with what's out there, and there's so many small companies that are helping rookies like me build, and, you know, companies like Fresh right here that are doing these things that can help small people who don't know technology really create something magical. So this is a really exciting time for me, because we have access to so much knowledge and capability.
Clayton, you want to comment that? I know you're advising a lot of different companies. You know, are most of them using other equipment? Or are they developing their own? A little bit of both?
Yeah, I think, you know, one of the choices Picnic had early on was, okay, so we made a machine that can make a pizza. First thing everybody's saying is, well, this is really good pizza. Why don't you sell pizza? And we said, well, we'd rather be a robotics company than a restaurant, is the answer to that. As it turns out, we were taking on a really hard problem, which is we had to make a machine that could work for the entire market, or for a big segment of the market, not just for a very narrow, like one flavor, one type of pizza. one type of ingredients. So again, we're very interested in what we try to take on. But I think that's something when we also did virtually everything in-house with our own engineering team. So I think, using outside services who have expertise to help you do things, narrowing the problem to something you could be successful at. I think that's a key element that makes the path easier.
Yeah, I think the approach that we take is we like to minimize our dependencies so that we have as much control over our stack as possible. I've seen, from developing robotics before that you can end up in this dependency hell as you scale. And early on, you can move quickly, but then it starts to slow you down later. And so I think you have to be really, really pointed with what dependencies you take on and where you outsource. And I think there's a trade-off and a decision matrix, and formalizing that is one of the ways that we think about how to do it. If it makes more sense for us to develop something versus, to buy. For example, commodity robot arms are fairly inexpensive at this point. We can do a lot of work with them off the shelf, but it's not necessarily like where we want to be, several, iterations from now. But it's a great way for us to hit the gate running, or hit the ground running right out of the gate and start testing right away. So I think from, that's from our perspective. From a customer perspective, I think, at the super high volume automation, there's, really high throughput. You don't want to use general purpose systems. You want to use these bespoke, one-off type systems that really pump out, high volumes. But when you start to think about the lower, throughput, higher variable cost per unit type tasks where there's a lot more time spent per unit, that's when I think you start, when someone would start to think about using an off-the-shelf general purpose type tool. So kind of this trade-off between what volume and stage you're at with what you're producing.
And then specifically for Clayton, following up on that, as an investor advisor, where are you bullish on implementing robotics and automation, and where are you the most conservative?
I remain a big believer in the potential of robotics and the opportunity. I think what we try to look at Redstick is the very specific founder mentality, the market you're trying to hit, how hard is the problem you're trying to solve. And Redstick is actually invested in Parker's company because we see him doing a lot of smart things and doing things the right way. So it's a very, very hard problem to solve. I used to tell our team, there's a cliche that hardware is hard compared to software. Robotics is a hard kind of hardware, and food robotics is one of the hardest kinds of robotics. So it's like triple challenge, really hard. So you've got to be able to solve lots of problems at the same time. And so the team is critical. The choices about market are critical. What you're actually trying to do with the automation is critical. So it's, you say you're bullish on robotics or food robotics, but you've got to be very narrowly focused on which ones of these opportunities really have a shot at making it, because it's actually really hard to raise money in the space because there's not too many examples of people who've been successful. And so, in fact, some of the biggest, most famous companies that have done food robotics have been successful because either they were bought by a big brand or they're sponsored by a big brand, and they just kind of disappear into that brand. I won't name names, but you don't really see them selling to everybody. They're selling to their partner, and that's fine, but that's not generally the path to success if you want to be a high-flying startup.
And then Parker, what breakthroughs in software robotics and are allowing you to in tactile sensing are letting you handle all these unpredictable ingredients, and what other tools are you using to manage these we saw some leafy greens and that kind of thing, which are challenging for humans to get consistent portions.
Yeah, so it's all in the gripper and the wrist. So basically, I think there's a couple pieces. There's force sensing to do reactive, corrective movement based on tiny feedback. You can use that force sensing for soft interaction with materials that you're working with. So it could be the leafy greens, it could be dough. It could be containers, like we're manipulating these like tiny little Dixie cups that you can't really squish too hard. There's also, the pressure sensing and the gripper closure that's really important to get right. I don't see a whole lot of value in like really dense tactile maps in the fingers. You see like these gel site sensors. I think, most of what I've seen them be used for is slip detection. And frankly, there's like not a whole lot of other benefit that I've seen there for the complexity that it adds to the system. So I think the name of the game is actually being really simple, like creating simple mechanisms, creating simple control laws, using a stack that has intelligence at like the planning level, and being methodical about, using vision to predict what's going to happen, but then using force sensing and like this haptic feedback for reactions and integrating those things. That sort of like layer of information, and it's very similar to what we do in the human body. There's, like the visual motor response, but then there's like the planning step. So those things all incorporated through the use of feedback, but then also incorporating that into visual motor policy learning at the machine learning level for movement generation. It's really all coupled. And so I think, risk sensing, pressure sensing, foundational policy models for predicting the movement and then reacting to it are what's really enabling us. And some of it is these new model architectures as well that can learn from more and more data and continue to refine in the precision of movement. So.
Awesome. For those who are familiar, there's a company that's in the kind of food startup world is fairly kind of like Picnic, a company called Sweet Greens. They developed their own robotic line to do some automation. I'm going to read this little quote from an article. Each initiative reflects the same underlying calculation. The long-term payoff from automations come from scale, standardization, reliable performance, not from proprietary hardware ownership. So this was reflecting on them selling their robotic division and exiting out and then separating the two companies. So I want to, have you all reflect on, where does robotics really come in, and where is just like, hey, business operation. And in your case, like you were talking about, like in your dough operations, a little bit of both, right? It's consolidating, but then also using robotics in the production. So, yeah.
So I watched this area really closely, and Sweet Greens is a really interesting case study. Not knocking Sweet Greens, I love the company and what they're doing, but I think just to be blunt, I think they sold because they had to. I think they let their technology go because they needed to raise that money in order to keep growing in what they're doing. And I think, I think real case scenarios is really important. Like for example, the Picnic Robotics, I beat the hell out of that machine. I mean, I was calling constantly and just real world testing it. I think I'm kind of rambling off track a little bit, but I think it's really important to understand your technology and hold on to it and keep developing it. And I think Sweet Greens letting go of it, I think it was a mistake. I think they should have held on to it because I think that's going to hold great value later on. They were so far ahead of the game with where they were. I don't know. That's kind of, sorry guys, I'm kind of rambling, but I got a lot to say about that, but I'm going to try to keep it to the minimum.
Yeah, I think Sweet Green's a good example of the power of capital, and they were able to do things that a lot of people can't do because they had a ton of money to spend, and a ton of money to spend per store, which wasn't really a viable model for anybody else to follow. But Lee's point is really well taken about iterating. Nobody produces first version of an automation system and says, okay, there, we're done. Let's just build a whole bunch of them. So you've got to find the right customer partner who's going to work with you. And this is what I tell early stage automation startups. It's like, okay, the two things you need is, one, you need patient customers, and two, you need patient capital, because it's going to take a long time and it's going to take lots of iterations, and nobody has it figured out yet. So it's going to take time and iterations to make it work. And unfortunately, the capital markets have not been kind to food robotics, and customers are distracted. They've got other stuff to worry about, so they don't really want to be a test bed. So finding the right customers who will work with you and be patient and work through generations and continuously improve, huge potential for what it can do in the future, but there's no instant karma.
Yeah, I think when you pencil out the unit economics of the Infinite Kitchen, I'm not sure it makes a whole lot of sense. I think it's pretty impressive what they've done, but at the end of the day, I think the payback associated with that system might actually be longer than folks realize. And so, there's probably more there than meets the eye.
Got it.
And I'd like to add, the reality of it doesn't pencil right now, right? I mean, that's very flat out. That's how it works. And I'm all in on this. And that's why, like with my business, I'm very keen on making sure that we are analog, able to produce what we can produce. So if one of our machines do break down, which has happened, and some of our robots do have issues that we can't fix because we don't understand that technology sometimes. So we make sure, like, for example, when we're pumping out 3,000 pizzas in one day at one of our stadiums events, and we're running our robots, and that robot comes down, we're able to flip over analog, so it doesn't hurt the business. So we run parallel along the way, because we know that we're in this for the long game. And I think that's the way that we have to look at it in the industry, is that there is no instant answer or a quick answer. I think we're going to be iterating for a while on what this technology is going to produce for us. But I am all in.
Well, speaking of the third triumph of being all in, we've heard you talk about using zip lines and doing some testing for drone delivery. Other than speedy delivery, what does UAV or autonomous vehicle delivery do to your business, whether it be bottom line or some other factor other than speed?
I love every form of this question, because I get it from people like, you're taking jobs away, and it's going to change the industry. Yes, it's going to change the industry, but I think it's going to be in a really positive way. For example, using the picnic robot, when we're pumping out 3,000 pizzas, it takes me, like I like to call analog, it takes me 13 people to build out 3,000 pizzas. When we're utilizing the robotics and it's working perfectly, it takes 2 people to load our robotics and prepare it for that many pizzas. So that's just a really quick thing. Those other people, the other of the 13, we actually put them in different spaces, and we utilize them that way. And it's changed the game. And that's why I've actually had the experience of where it really positive affected our operations. And I love it. And we're not getting rid of anybody. It just enhances everything that we do.
Following up on it for you, Clayton, it's not just zipline. You go to college campuses and there's a Starship delivery vehicles. What's the most successful autonomous vehicle thing you've seen in the restaurant industry or food delivery industry? Or if you say it's not successful, that's an answer too. So
Yeah, it's a little outside of my field. I haven't really done. We flirted with people who wanted to do drone delivery, and I've observed. I have a lot of friends in the industry who are doing various autonomous deliveries, and that just for me that business always was a challenge. It's the last mile problem. You can get the autonomous delivery to the curb or to the house or whatever, but now what? So I think, again, that's something that in the future, it's absolutely there. I think drones probably have the most potential for the end-to-end solution, but it just takes time. It takes iteration, and somebody's got to be patient enough to keep pouring money into those companies to get that to where it's actually a viable, ongoing thing.
So next one for Parker. When I go out, like AI is the biggest buzzword right now. When I go into a general networking event, there's a startup community. 99% of the companies are AI companies. But for you specifically, what has AI unwrapped and kind of led to your company here, and where do you see it kind of continue to grow in the next 2 to 3 years?
Yeah, so we're positioned as an AI robotics company, right? So we're not holding back on that. I will say, what that actually means is we're using machine learning models. And what that actually means is we're using data to train hyperfunction approximation. And all of it is in the data collection. So really, there's pre-trained models that you can use for computer vision. Those work great off the shelf. You really don't need to innovate a whole lot there. You can go download FastSam right now and go detect like every instance of what you'd be interested in this room. No work needed there. On The movement generation side of things, there's a lot of work that has to happen. And so that's really where we're innovating. Now, what you're doing is you're taking human movement and you are replicating that in a code approximation, which is just neural network weights. And that unlocks the ability to solve problems that we don't have other methods to solve right now. So there are existing methods for generating movement from point A to point B without colliding with objects. We don't need to use machine learning for that. We're going to go use those algorithms. They're very reliable. They're very robust. They work at 99.99% plus reliability. That's what we're going to use. When we're talking about interacting with objects that have really fine microdynamics, where as the noise of just from sensor noise or changes in motion affect the outcome of those dynamics, they propagate and things change and grow. That's the kind of thing that we don't have these off-the-shelf or algorithmic solutions for, where data is going to be super valuable for us to solve. So that last centimeter of movement where you're coming in contact with objects, where you're coming in contact with dough, where you're coming in contact with some of these containers, that's really where we think this has an outsized impact, and we're seeing lots of gains there. But it's really using machine learning where you don't have existing solutions to already solve the problem. So composing those solutions with non-ML and ML approaches in a really robust manner and an intelligent manner is where we see the gains. I think, down the line, we're going to see, more efficient usage of data. We're going to see higher volume collection of data to really enable these like data hungry models. And I think, in the physical world, there isn't this large data set internet size that exists. You have to go collect that. And so a lot of it is around the collection strategies to go scale up these systems.
Lee, jumping back on, you were talking about human labor. Obviously with layoffs, the age of robotics, AI, it's a topic of, hey, are people getting replaced? In your operations, tell me about the robotics, was it cost, consistency, a dependable labor force, or something else? What's been the biggest impact of robotics
in my
in your business? Yeah, in your business.
Yeah, in a practical sense, the thing that's got me really excited about AI first is I'm already using it. So, for example, my payroll is about $500,000 every 2 weeks, and it used to take my guy 2 days to do payroll. We're now utilizing AI right now, and it takes him 4 minutes. And how he rolls off of that is, it's not just taking people's schedule, it's taking schedule requests, it's taking the forecast at what we have for every day of sales, and it's implementing all that and just magically figuring it out. And that's how we're using AI. So it saves that much time just with our payroll. So that's an example of the AI that I'm using right now, and it's super practical. I think the reason I'm so excited about robotics is because I think it's not just going to change how we're doing business. I think it's going to create really, how do I want to say this, impactful cultural change. And I think it's going to do that in a really positive way. And I think that's going to affect this right here, the relationships. And this is the thing that I really love. I think it's going to improve our relationships. I think it's going to improve the way we interact with each other. This is my big picture, so it might be too woo-woo for some of you with tech, but I think that's the really important part, and that's why we're all here and why we're doing it, because I think those relationships is all about why we're doing these things.
You just stole my next question, so I don't even have to ask it. That's great. So for Clayton, Parker, what are the biggest surprises that you rolled out robotics technology from the customer side? Something that surprised you that you thought that, hey, this is going to work, no problem, and maybe we're surprised by.
I would say for us, we started off with the theory of the case was this is going to save labor, and people would say, well, you're going to cut jobs, and then it's okay, have you looked at the restaurant labor force situation? And we had the National Restaurant Association stats, how many open jobs there are in labor in restaurants. And restaurant jobs are they're like modern itinerant workers. People can get a job, work for a few weeks, got enough money to pay the rent, leave the job. They leave the job because a lot of times there's no room for advancement, and it's easy to get the next job because everybody's hiring. And so people are just churning through these jobs. And what that means is that you always have inexperienced workers, unless you have a great business and a great boss like Lee. Most businesses struggle with that, the inexperienced workers. Well, with pizza, the inexperienced workers make bad pizza. They put too much cheese on, it doesn't cook properly, they don't get the ingredients right, and that degrades the brand, and it's a problem. So what we found was the labor problem at the heart of it, but the consequence is you get inconsistent product, you get food waste. Food waste was actually the largest savings that our customers observed because the inexperienced workers were making bad pizza and wasting ingredients, either making a pizza that had to be thrown away or overtopping the pizza, and that food waste cost was astronomical. So that actually food waste and consistency turned out to be a much bigger value than labor, because people can work around only having a partial crew. Everybody works harder, but the food waste turned out to be the big savings that we were able to offer.
Yeah, I think we've seen everything that that you've mentioned, Clayton, like the food waste side of things. We've also seen this ability to work off hours. So if folks are primarily in the kitchen for 6 to 8 hours a day, what are the things that can happen when they're not there to get ready for the next day? So this kind of night shift type operation. A lot of the type of work that automation is going to be doing early on is this super repetitive, tedious type work that people don't want to be doing. Like the things that are just like the pain points that I have to staff this task, but nobody wants it. And that kind of feeds into, one of the things that, you talk about the labor issue and the labor displacement issue. We have a different mindset around this. It's that really the name of the game is not automating these jobs away. It's supplementing the workforce with automation that makes their job easier and makes them more productive. And it's really providing them a tool. So we see this idea of, like a robot on wheels where you can push around and use this flexible system in the way that you use another piece of equipment, but it can do more than that piece of equipment. This really provides a better job experience for the worker. It actually gives them opportunities for upskilling so they can actually work closer to the technology, benefit from working alongside that technology, have new opportunities for employment afterwards, and they can have more pay because the ROI and the bottom line behind these systems makes more sense. So I think there's a lot of opportunity for human augmentation, not human replacement, and that's what we're focused on.
Can I add to that too?
Go for it.
I think what they're saying, to kind of put it in practical sense, because I love painting these pictures. The picnic robot, it really lit me up, because what was cool about it, they designed it so well with the refrigeration. So any cheese that dropped, the refrigeration caught it on the plate underneath, right? We had 0 waste on our cheese, which was typically closer to like 1% plus, right? Last year, we sold 160 tons of cheese. I brought a calculator if you want to. So significant impacts on our business bottom line. And I think these things are really helpful, because nobody wants to sit there and cheese 3,000 pizzas. So that's a really good point on that kind of meticulous labor part, right?
Yeah, I just add one more story on that. When we were at T-Mobile Park, the first place we piloted, we went in there and they've got a central kitchen. They make all the meals for the suites. There's 36 suites or whatever, however many there are. So and pizza is one of the dishes they make. Well, they have the reputation of that pizza is pretty terrible, because the crew is always short-staffed. It's seasonal workers. The lowest guy on the totem pole is the guy who gets to make the pizza. They use a frozen dough. They pull it out. They top it. They stick it back in the freezer. They pull it out. They don't treat it the way you're supposed to treat it. And it's just a nightmare the way they prepare it. And this poor guy is trying to shuffle around and push carts down and deliver pizza. Anyway, so we brought our machine in, and when we first got to the stadium, at the time the name of the company was Vivid Robotics. That was the name before it was Picnic. And we checked in with a security guard, and we said, we're here with Vivid Robotics. We're going to the kitchen. Said, oh, you guys are the guys who are going to kill all the jobs. Oh, thank you very much. Nice to meet you. So we go in there, and we didn't know what kind of reception we were going to get in the kitchen. And then they saw it, and it's like, oh, okay. It didn't look like a robot. Didn't look like a person. It looked kind of harmless. Well, we met this poor guy. We'll call him Andre, who had to make the pizza. And so we're training him, and again, not the executive chef, just this guy working in this kitchen, seasonal worker, and we're like, okay, how is he going to be able to handle it? He figured it out pretty quickly. He's making the pizza. Well, the first night it was operating, the chef told us that he was really surprised because they were getting repeat orders from the suites for the pizza. So the pizza is really good. Can we get some more of that? And that had never happened, I think, in the history of T-Mobile Park. And so then we asked Andre the next day, well, what did you think of this machine? How was it? He says, this is great. I don't have to make pizza anymore.
Awesome. So other than your own company or someone here on the panel, what company out there do you think is doing most innovative work or solving a really hard challenge that you're impressed by? Get whoever jumps in first.
Yeah, I'll take the easy answer first, which I think it's this guy right here. I think he's actually, and I say that for a couple of reasons. One is because I had met Parker a while ago and I observed what he was doing, helped him get hooked up with my partners at Redstick. Redstick was impressed. They invested. I'm on his mailing list, getting his reports of what he's up to. And because he's taking a completely different approach, but still tackling the same problem. And it's so impressive to me. It's several years later, 7 years ago when we were trying to do this the first time, and I see what Parker's doing. And it's just really impressive.
I love what you're doing, by the way, as I get to poke behind the curtain a little bit more. I'm really fortunate. For some reason, I get to be let behind a lot of curtains, and I'm seeing what's happening out there in real time. And I'm not going to say one company, but I'm going to say many companies. The ones that I'm really fascinated by are these little companies that are solving like global humanitarian problems. And that's really exciting to me. And they're utilizing technology in a way like I could have never imagined. And, seeing what they're doing and the connectivity of technology and AI that kind of brings us together and also brings those companies together. Like they're starting to collaborate and, start to work together on solving these solutions versus being isolated. I think that's the magic of what these companies are doing versus just one specific company.
Awesome. Parker, you got any thoughts?
Yeah, I appreciate the kind words, Clayton. Yeah, so I think there's a couple of companies that I've been following fairly closely. So one of them it's a general purpose robotics company. It's called Generalist. I am very impressed by their movement. I think when you know what it takes to generate movement that looks like that, I really like what they're doing. A little bit outside of the food space, but in a related is the ag tech space. I've actually really enjoyed following folks like Carbon Robotics as well as iGen. I think you can tell that the ag tech automation space is more mature. And it's been really cool to see that get dialed in, but also where like the reusability fits in and like what that looks like at a more mature stage. So you kind of get to peer around the curtain and look into like what the future might hold for, in kitchen by, looking at these ag tech companies as examples. So yeah, I've been really impressed by some of the work out of those groups.
Got it. So my work here is almost done. After this question, we're going to open up to a few audience questions. So get your questions ready. But now you guys, I want each of you three to ask anyone on the panel a question that you want to ask someone else. So you guys, who wants to jump in first? You guys know this is coming, so it's no surprise.
I've been asking Lee a question. Yeah. So when I met Lee, he was operating out of a little house in West Seattle, and he had a several-week backlog. If you wanted one of his pizzas, you could either order one and wait 6 weeks, or you could show up at 3:30 in the afternoon and stand in line for an hour and get one of his pizzas. And he took me through a tour and showed me his hand harvested ingredients and all of his special touches for his recipes. And I said, how in the world did you get in this business? Oh, I was running this hotel. It's like, what? My question for you, Lee, is how did you go from being a hotel host to being a pizza guy in a little house to being this world famous Super Bowl betting technologist with an expanding portfolio of business opportunities?
That is a crazy story. My daughter calls me Big Fish, if you remember the movie, because I have so many crazy stories. It actually stemmed from the hostels that we had in Belltown in downtown Seattle. And we actually had a farm on top, and I became a huge agricultural technologist fan. And I had my own aquaponic system up there that I built by hand and with scraps. And I grew tilapia in that and vegetables on top. I had sub-irrigation planters from the Japanese scientists that developed that, and grew all kinds of crazy stuff on that. And I was really into it, and got to travel and see some of what the advanced farms are doing and a lot of the fermentation techniques. And the hostel itself, we actually had, we became very well known because we would have kids come stay with us, or backpackers and travelers, and I would take them foraging, or we would go to Pike Place Market, or I would teach them how to squid jig at midnight on the piers, and we would come back and we would create dinners. And during that time, we would make these crazy dinners, and we would also make pizza. And so when COVID hit, we kind of lost everything, and that was my pivot. I'm like, you know what? I'm going to make pizza. So found this little house, and I thought I was just going to have to make 40 pizzas a day. And by the way, I never made 40. It just wasn't, I sold everything. It was crazy. But yeah, so that led me to the technology on the farm, is what led me into robotics. And yeah, now I'm going all in on everything that I can. But in Japan, I'm working closely with some farmers and some groups on agricultural technology, which we could talk about later.
Lee, you got a question? Parker, you got a question?
Yeah, I have a question for both of you, actually. So if you were to start it over, knowing what you know now and with what you have available today, what's like the main thing that you would change?
The short, simple answer is pay attention to the capital markets. Don't raise money in a free money market, and then try to continue to raise money when the market shifts and your valuation is way out of sight. That there's these things like that are out of your control, but if you don't watch the signals, you can just find yourself in an untenable position. That's one thing. I'd say the other thing is just choose an achievable vision. At Picnic, we had a really big vision and real big ambition, and thought we could go do the biggest, highest, hardest problem. And maybe we could have, but it took a lot more money and time than we had. So, find small wins, find a place to get a foothold, and then build on that, because even the best ideas are going to take time to germinate.
I'm going to actually piggyback off of Clayton's answer. We've raised a total of just over $6 million to start off with. And I would say, don't raise money. Like, be scrappy. Start it up as any way you can, shoestring, bootstrap. I think that's the smartest way to go. I really love where we've gone, because the networking and the venture capital that I got to work with has opened up a lot of doors for me. But if I was to do it over again, I would do it without venture capital from the get-go till at least maybe 3 to 5 years in, and really build something solid. I'm cool with it, but looking back, I would have done it differently.
Everybody get a question? Anyone?
Yeah, I have one for Clayton. So Clayton has done it all. He's been everywhere. I always tell young people that ask me how I did it. I always say, fail fast, fail hard, and fail a lot. So my question is to Clayton, how do you handle your failures?
That's a great question. I actually have a sort of a second career advising job seekers, because I've been a job seeker, for the last 20 years. I've probably been a job seeker for maybe 2.5 years of that time. I was first unemployed involuntarily about 20 years ago, and I didn't know anything about it. And I went to an outplacement counselor, and it was Labor Day, and I said, I got to get a job by Halloween. And she just laughed at me. And she said, you'll probably get a job by February. And in fact, I started my next job in February. And she said, well, what do you want to do? I said, well, I'll work. I could do anything. So, I've got this opportunity to be a general manager at a napalm factory. Are you interested? Well, maybe not anything. So I became a student of the process of how you go through that transition. And actually found myself giving the same advice in coffee shops all over town back when that was a thing. Then in Zoom meetings all over the country back when that was a thing. So just being a student of what is the situation? How do you deal with it? What are the steps to progress out of it? I came up with for job seeking specifically, I came up with a list of 13 tips, which I've probably sent it to a third of the people in the room at various times because it's the same list. I just recycle it. I haven't updated it in 10 years, but it seems to still work. I think just being resilient and being open-minded about what's next and being methodical about the approach, and don't panic, don't get emotional, and always tell people if you're job searching, you need a buddy, and your buddy is not your spouse. Your spouse is in the car with you and they're in the back seat and they don't want to hear that you just screwed up that interview. So find somebody else that you can talk to and bounce that off of, and the journey will lead to ever increasing success.
Awesome. We got maybe 2 or 3 questions from the audience. So if right here, right in front. Yep. Yeah. If you want to stand up and or you can come use the mic, whatever you feel more comfortable. Yeah.
Oh, I have so many questions.
Just one. Yeah, sure.
Okay.
Or you can ask the panel too. Yeah.
I'll do two. Mr. Kindell, what was the biggest problem point with Picnic Robotics, a pizza making robot, and the workers who had to operate that robot? And for Mr. Owen, how does interactive data like Century RL or real world RL fit into or does it at all? What do you think about it?
Yeah, I'll just touch on one thing that we haven't mentioned yet, which is one of the challenges of food robotics is, by definition, you're trying to produce a consistent product. As founder of Chef Steps once said, a kitchen is a horribly inefficient factory. So it's like you're really trying to produce a consistent product, but you're doing it with really crazy processes or no process, crazy levels of training or no training. Well, food robot is trying to produce a consistent dish that you're selling that someone has had before. They want the same thing. And so it's hard for the robot to do that. It's even harder for the robot to do that in the setting of the real world of restaurants, where the restaurant supply chain is just miserable. You can't get the same ingredient. You can order, we had 2 cans of tomato sauce with identical labels, and you open them up and there were 2 different products inside the can. Cheese is notorious for being really finicky by itself with temperature and age, but supplier to supplier, very finicky. You get all this high variation inputs, and you're trying to make a consistent output. It's a really big problem to solve. And it was something we didn't really anticipate till we got into it. And we didn't even see the supplier problem till we got into customers' operations. And we realized that if you order something from US Foods, they'll send you whatever they've got. They won't send you what you ordered.
I'd like to answer that question I think it's really important to set expectations. And no robot is perfect yet, right? So everything breaks down. Cars break down, robots break down, telephones break down, the whole works. So setting the expectations, and then also just being ready for anything, having an open mind to anything can happen. I want to acknowledge my buddy Serge over there. He's my favorite engineer of all time. He worked for Picnic for a while, but we went back. He was always on the phone for me when I needed him. I remember when the machine started going down, we were pumping literally hundreds of pounds through this machine, and the cheese arm that feeds the cheese started bending from the weight, and which we didn't accomplish for. And like I said, you got to beat robots down in order to get the highest function out of them. So I literally took my apron string, cut it, and I tied the end of the arm and pulled it up. So you got to be kind of creative too, because when you're in it, anything can happen and you want to just keep going. The show must go on. So little things like that, you just got to be ready for, and know that what the expectations are. Anything, be ready for anything.
Oh, thanks. On the sim to real question, so I'm a big believer in going straight to real. So I think, when you think about things, especially like I was just watching this process the other day, somebody cutting a very large, hundreds of pounds of dough to put it into smaller containers. there's a lot of interaction physics going on in that. It would take a lot to simulate that, and it would take a lot to simulate that correctly to a point where you would then train behavior on that. So why not just go straight for collecting the data with that task and learning that right away? So there's another data point here, which is, I think in the autonomous vehicle space, these companies, these AV companies, probably spend just as much on the behavior training, AI modeling side as they do on simulation. So to give you a perspective of how much of a lift high fidelity simulation is, and it's still not up to parity with like human, unpredictability. So we're talking about, interaction physics unpredictability. So our thesis is skip sim and go straight to real.
All the way back in the middle there. Yep.
So a little bit related to this question there. But first, I used to work in a bakery in the bake farm. The idea is you're going to use this almanac data to get your best results. No matter what the input is, any day you go in and what the best ones are, but like we actually have synthesized all. Have you found that through automation, there's been more data to actually use that to improve output?
If I can, real time, yes, and yes. I have become the biggest data freak. I failed at math all through school, but I am now, like I said, I carry a calculator now because I do a lot of math, and the data that we collect now, that was a perfect example of it. Our dough that we produce, there's friction, there's heat, there's so many factors that are involved with just our dough alone. So we do utilize a lot of that data collection for 5 years now. So we used to keep an analog log. Now everything we temp, it keeps that temp and records it. Everything we record now. So yeah, I love data.
One last question there in the red.
I don't want to do anything. Question is, how do you do with outages? I know you know something. I know you talk about analog, but that's the human. But our outage that we're doing with does it ever happen that you have?
Hold on once. So just for the audience, the two questions were: have you ever had a robot go rogue on you, and what do you do about outages?
Yes, and yes. So we've had our robot get stuck into making just cheese pizza, and it just is like we're like, Surge, what do we do? So we've had that happen, and these things do happen. We've had power go out, we've had internet go out, and that's why I talk how important it is to be analog, because if you just plan, okay, power outage, what are we going to do? But if you plan to be able to, everything that we do, there's a parallel line. And so if anything happens on any one of those happenstances, we're able to just shift like within 3 minutes on what we're doing. So that's how we kind of plan for anything to go wrong.
I would just say, I know at Picnic, Serge may have some stories, but I know there were some times when the ingredients were flying out of the machine instead of landing on the pizza. Power outages, we didn't worry about too much because most restaurants, if there's a power outage, they actually can't even operate and they'll just close. But what we did worry about was if the machine goes down or breaks down, you can't really afford to say, okay, I'm going to call the repairman and he'll be there in 2 hours, because you'll lose that service period. So our whole design philosophy was, let's make it so that anything that will break, like you drop something and it just shatters, we're shipping a spare where you can just swap in and get another piece there. And everything else is something where the operators are trained to fix, reset, get back up in operation within just a very few minutes. And that was the design philosophy. I don't know how, we strive for that. I don't know how successful we were ultimately, but we recognize that just downtime is a killer. It's a real-time operation, and you've got to be able to recover quickly and be back up in production.
Yeah, I think, when I see robot, I don't really ever see robots going rogue. I just see them, they just don't work. So I've seen plenty of robots not working and going unstable. I think we've broken a few. That's just the nature of the business. But I think when you talk about like this kind of touches on KPIs and the things that we think about from like a metrics perspective. So I think about success rate. So that's how well the robot can do the job. I think about uptime, which is what Clayton mentioned. To me, this is really, what's the mean time between failure? How many interventions you need? The more uptime, the better for everybody, both the robot provider and the end user and the customer. And then we think about defect injection. So the metric I like there is defects per million opportunities. So this is the long tail of optimization now, like starting to make sure that you're not injecting defects like, a few ounce or, 0.1 ounce of cheese off from your placement. And then I think the last piece is around utilization. So maximizing the utilization. I think if power goes out, then the facility probably can't operate, but this utilization and this ability to ramp, to Lee's point, having this flexibility so that if the system goes down and it's not operational, you don't bring down your customer's line in the process, and you have a way to sort of phase that out. If you're going straight to a lights out facility without having tested anything, you're setting yourself up for failure. You need to have a ramp into those KPIs. And so I think it's really important to think about, those things.
So now, after all this robotics and AI, we're going to bring back the human element and get back to networking. So before everybody jumps up in the chairs, reminder, you can get your pictures back at the photo booth back here. Get out there, network, exchange, connect with other people here in the robotics industry. And then panelists, if you stay here for just a half second, Kurt's going to snap a picture of us. And
Cool.
if you guys post your pictures, make sure to tag Northwest Robotics Alliance on LinkedIn. Thanks for coming out. We'll be doing it again soon. So follow us and thank you.
Thank you. Hey, I got one. Can I close with one thing?
Yes.
I'd like to close with one thing, guys, and I think it's really important, especially right now. And I do this all the time, and I do it on my social media. I think my wife and I have been in business as business partners for 20 years plus. And I think that it's really important. We have a saying that everybody's just a squirrel trying to get a nut. While you're doing business and you're doing your thing, you never know what somebody's going through that you're working with or dealing with or that you're communicating with. Take a moment to think about that and just always be kind. Thank you, guys.